I wanted to do something a little bit different today and walk through the neighborhood where we have all these different condos and little apartments here in South Beach, because I'm always walking through the neighborhoods with the houses, but I never really walk through these neighborhoods here to show a different side of living. And maybe we'll see some funny listings down here too, where people are asking crazy amounts of money for this tiny little apartment or something like that. Nicole Bashad, she is the senior economist over at Zillow, and she recently came out and said that the biggest asset that most people are never going to own is a home. Right now, I think the nation's share of homeownership is about 64% or something. So that's actually not true, guys, because the majority of people are homeowners more than renters. But anyways, I wanted to talk about this because you've heard a lot of this saying in the past about, you know, you'll own nothing and be happy, and nobody's going to be able to afford a house in the future, and all of this and that. I want to talk about some of the things that surround this idea of homeownership that simply just aren't true, okay? First of all, they say that when you make your mortgage payments, it adds to the wealth of households every month. That's what economists say, because buying a home essentially forces you into a savings plan. Now, there is a little bit of truth to that, because over time you build equity, and it's a way of forced savings. You know, if you don't save any money in your entire life, say you don't have a savings account, you spend everything you make, but you own a home and you pay your mortgage on time and you don't miss payments, then you're still technically putting money away and saving for the future, because that home is appreciating in value over decades, as well as the fact that you are paying down debt, and eventually you'll own the house outright if you keep making those payments. Versus if you live the same exact lifestyle and you are a renter, when you look at the end of a 30-year period, the person who was the homeowner but spends everything will at least have the home and the equity in the home, and the person who's a renter who spends everything and saves nothing will have nothing in the end. The sad part is, guys, is it's been deduced to that, right? Like, the level of success now has been reduced to the, are you a homeowner or not? That's because people's spending habits are so terrible that they can't save a single dollar for their future, so that's why you need to own a home. But one thing that they say in here that is definitely not true is they say that when you become a homeowner, you become your own landlord. Well, actually, not really. When you become a homeowner, now you have two landlords instead of one. The bank is the first one because they hold your mortgage. If you don't pay, they'll foreclose. Oh, you paid off the mortgage? Well, your second landlord will still be your landlord till the day you die or the day you sell that house, because the second landlord is somebody called the county tax appraiser. And they essentially will keep raising your rent to rent your land that you think you own for the rest of your duration, okay? And when that property passes on to the next person, they'll be renting that land to them as well. Because the reality is, guys, if you truly owned a piece of property, why should we have to pay the local governments for that right of ownership? Why do they get to have the last say and the domain over everything, right? Why do we have to pay them if we truly own it? If you own the house, then you shouldn't have to pay anybody else anything, right? But that's never going to be the case. So to say that when you become a homeowner, you are your own landlord is just a way to fool yourself into thinking that that's true, because it's just not. Now, one data point that I see getting repeated a lot is that the average homeowner has nearly $400,000 in housing wealth compared to $10,000 net worth for a renter. So we know that owning a home is a wealth building tool, guys. Here we have a rental building, and the only unit for rent right now is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 700 square feet for $31.50 a month. I know, that is absolutely crazy. These units used to be like $1,500 a month. They bought this building back in 2021 for $2.3 million, and they actually just listed it for sale earlier this month in December for $5.75 million. Property tax bill here is $36,000 a year, and somehow they got a reduction. It went from 60 grand to 36,000. Wow, look at that. Now, first of all, I guarantee you most homeowners do not have $400,000 in equity, guys. That is a large overestimate, I'm pretty sure. The truth is, they do have more net worth than the average renter because of what we just talked about. But it doesn't have to be that way. You know, this whole thing about homeowners having a far greater net worth than renters is by choice, guys. Like, if you are irresponsible with your money, and you're paying less to rent than you would if you have to own, and you don't invest and save that difference, that's on you, okay? That's your fault, nobody else's fault. It's not like the person that decided to become the homeowner is inherently a smarter and wiser investor than you are. It just means that, you know, they're being forced to save that money, and at the end of the day, when all the chips are counted, they're going to have more chips on the table than you. But that also assumes that the person who supposedly has more net worth than the renter, that's a homeowner, never borrows against the house, they don't take out a bunch of home equity loans or home equity lines of credit, and the value of their house doesn't sink below what they actually owe on the house, because that can flip that dynamic upside down real fast. But this whole idea that you need to become a homeowner to be successful and be wealthy in life is just not true, guys. I don't know if you guys have seen this guy, Ramit Sethi. He wrote this book a while ago called I'll Teach You to Be Rich. He had his own Netflix show and all of this. And he's somebody that's a big proponent of people not owning their own home to become rich, and using that money that they would spend normally on a house and invest it over the long run and become wealthier like that and have the flexibility and the ease of renting. For everybody, that's a personal choice. I'm not saying that that's what people should do, but I am saying that if you're going to go the renting path and you just generally enjoy being a renter, that's absolutely the path you should take, rather than just accept defeat and blow all your money, guys. Now, this story also chronicles somebody, 38-year-old in California, that wanted to buy his own house, okay? And he was approved to buy a house for $750,000, but where he lives in Culver City, California, the average home sells anywhere between $1 and $1.5 million. So he is far below where he needs to be in terms of being able to buy a house in his area. And in order for them to buy a house where they live, the mortgage payments would be about $10,000 a month, guys. And I can verify that as somebody that has spent a significant amount of time in California. That's pretty much what you're looking at right now if you want to buy a house in that range. And he said one of the problems is with his job, because he works in the film industry, is his income fluctuates anywhere between $80,000 to $130,000 a year. Now, that is a huge swing in income every year, and it means you can't really rely on how much you're going to make from one year to the next. But a lot of times what people will do in that situation, just like one of my viewers we talked about in yesterday's video, is they'll base all of their future earnings based on that one good year and think that they're going to be able to earn that much money forever, guys, and that's just not how life goes. And he goes on to say, he's like, listen, even if I could find a house in my budget for $750 grand, I could barely afford it, okay? Right now he's only paying $4,000 a month in rent, but if he were to buy that $750,000 house, he would easily be paying $6,000 to $7,000 a month, guys, depending on the property taxes, if there's an HOA, things like that. So his payment will go up significantly if he becomes a homeowner at that price range. Technically, I could afford it, but it's so high at the top of his budget of what he could afford every month that he would essentially be one hiccup away from losing everything if anything went wrong, guys. Now, why would anybody want to put themselves in that position? This man has a roof over his head, he can afford his $4,000 a month rent, and buying this house is going to do no favors for him. In fact, it's going to destabilize his life, essentially. He says, if I lose my job unexpectedly, he's not going to be able to pay his bills. And he says, with how quickly this would ruin my finances, it just doesn't seem worth it. Meaning, like, if you're just one job loss away from financial ruin, guys, that's not a good way to be living your life. But the problem is this narrative that you must become a homeowner to become successful, you must become a homeowner to have a high level of net worth, and all of this is just not true. Because if you're somebody like this guy that needs to risk everything to become a homeowner and it doesn't work out, you're going to be setting yourself much further behind even renters that have a $10,000 net worth, guys. You're going to be wishing you had a $10,000 net worth when you're upside down in your house and you owe more than the property's worth because you bought at the top of the market and prices are coming down. Basically, if you're looking at becoming a homeowner and are looking at risking everything financially to do it, it's not worth it, guys. You just need to have a roof over your head. That's the main essential that people have forgotten about. And we know that people cannot afford these houses today because the average household income right now is $75,000 a year, okay? That's 51% of all households throughout the country, guys. So more than half of the people, that's their household income. Okay, that means they can afford a house right now at these rates of $256,000. Yet the median home price is $431,000 according to Fred data. Look at that disconnect. Now, this is where a lot of people would bring up the housing shortage and say, oh, well, that's because there's just no homes for sale, Michael, and that's pushed the price of homes to astronomical levels. Well, I would agree that there's a supply shortage, but only on the lower segment of the market, guys. This is where we're in trouble right now, because when you look at the fact that half the country can only afford a house up to $250K or less, and there's hardly anything out there for sale anymore for that, median home price is $150,000 higher, that's a big issue. And people in this price range get hit with a double-edged sword because not only is there more competition for those type of homes because that's what other people can afford as well, but you also have the competition from investors because those are the type of homes that investors target because that's where the highest return on investment can be made, and they can just buy more houses for less money in the lower price range. So literally everybody wants to buy that cheap house, okay? And that's why you don't see any of them available anymore. That's why the cheap house that was 250 grand is now 400 grand because they got bid up so high. And who knows, guys, maybe home builders will come to the rescue on this. Maybe they will recognize that this is what people can really afford and they're missing out on a huge market share of people. Maybe they'll start building homes that cheap. Like I already shared with you guys last week in a video that there are houses here in Florida now, new construction, that are selling around the 300K mark, okay? And that's only $50,000 higher than that 250K of what people can afford. So that gap is getting smaller and smaller of what the home builders are building and what people can actually afford. And I think they're gonna recognize that trend and meet it sooner than later. And another thing that so many new buyers and so many new homeowners just don't think about, guys, are the ongoing expenses of owning a house and how much those things can really go up. You know, home insurance across the board, not just in Florida, we're talking nationwide this year, on average is up 35%, guys. 35% in 1 year increase. And when you combine that with the fact that property taxes also go up, especially when you pay more for a house, then the ongoing repairs that happen when you own the house because you are your own landlord. In that sense, you are your own landlord. There's nobody to call to the rescue when things break. You got to pay for it. And once again, they focus on the wrong thing, right? They tell people, oh, just wait for interest rates to drop and it'll make things affordable again. Well, no, it won't, guys, because let's look at this right now. If interest rates were to drop back down to 3% tomorrow, what do you think that would do? That would actually reactivate the market and people would flood back in to buy. That I wholeheartedly agree with. I don't think that's going to happen at the 5 or 5.5% mark, but if it went back down to 3%, absolutely it would reignite home buying, assuming the economy hasn't crashed by then. But you know what's pushing people into believing that they should get out there and buying right now? Are headlines like this one. Listen to this. It says, existing home sales tick up while prices keep rising. Now, that headline is actually true, but there's more to it than meets the eye. This is basically designed to make you panic. It's basically designed to make you FOMO into buying right now because you'll never be able to buy again if you don't. But when you read between the lines and look at what's really happening in the market, you'll see that that's not true. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. Existing home sales were on the decline for 5 straight months until October came around, where it went up a measly 0.8%, but still down 7.3% from a year ago. So the amount of existing home sales that are happening is still down year over year by quite a bit. And then they go in here and say, well, home prices have also risen for the 5th consecutive month in a row. So that means all is well with real estate, right? And you better get in and buy before you can't afford it anymore. Well, let's dig a little bit deeper. According to the National Association of Realtors, in November, median home price went up to $387,600, which is up 4% from November of 2022. Not a bad year-over-year price appreciation. However, according to the same data from the National Association of Realtors, home prices actually hit their highest level ever, and they peaked back in June of 2022 at $413,800, guys. So we're talking that today, home prices are a good $30,000 cheaper than they were in June of 2022. But they're talking about how things are going up year over year, and that's why you should be rushing out to buy, which is just a misleading statement, because even though it is up year over year, it's still down a healthy amount from its peak. This is already debunking the myth that, oh my God, you're never gonna be able to afford a house because prices only go up, guys. Well, when you zoom out and you get away from just that year over year statistic, we can see that prices are actually down from where they were a couple of years ago. And at the same time, inventory is ticking up a little bit, okay? The amount of homes on the market at the end of November is at 1.13 million. And it's a little bit down from October, but it's still up from a year ago. So like I said, once you zoom out, inventory is still on the rise. It's not going down. It might be down month over month, but it's not down year over year. And so when we look at this chart from Redfin of home prices here, we can see that home prices have essentially been flat for the last couple of years and is actually down a little bit, guys. And we're likely to see next year be another repeat of that. We're likely to see home prices stay relatively flat. And so you're going to be talking about a 3-year time frame when home prices really didn't go up at all, because any type of gains that we see into 2024 are probably just going to be going back to where they were at the peak in June of 2022. So you're not really gaining anything, you're just getting back to where it was, understand? And here's why this whole thing is not going to last, and you shouldn't let stories like this scare you into buying right now. Because Adam, the data firm, they just came out with their most recent report saying how mortgage payments have now hit 34% of the average wage nationwide, guys. And that's up 3% from a year ago. So the amount of money that people are spending on their monthly income on their house payment is up 3% from a year ago. And listen what they say. This is not even me saying this. They say, despite home prices fluctuating and mortgage rates ticking down, that means that owning a home remains an unsustainable long-term expense for many Americans. Unsustainable long-term expense, guys. Think about that. The recommended amount is that your house payment shouldn't be more than 28% of your gross income, and now it's at 34%. And like I've mentioned before, when you factor in property taxes and insurance and the actual cost of maintaining the home, it's actually more like 50% of somebody's pay. So just paying for your house, you're already looking at 50%, and then you still got to pay for a student loan payment, your food, your utilities, having a life, doing something fun once in a while. Is there anything left after all of this? My guess is for most people, probably not. And this is exactly why this whole thing is unsustainable. And the other thing that we know right now is that baby boomers are taking up the lion's share of who's buying these houses right now, guys. So if you're wondering, how are people affording these houses? Well, people that are buying them are established, okay? They have a house that they can sell and pull equity from, and maybe even pay cash for a house, first of all. And people who are first-time buyers who are entering the market, their average age is like 36 years old right now. And so if you're 36, chances are you've probably been saving and are much more established and have a steady career and are ready to become a homeowner, in a sense that you've been working for the past 15 years to make this happen, Because literally 39% of all of the home sales right now are being performed by baby boomers, okay? So that is a big chunk of the market right off the bat. And guess what, guys? They're getting old, and one day they're gonna die, and one day that house is gonna either be inherited by somebody younger in your generation, or is gonna be sold to somebody younger in your generation. Somebody's gonna have to come and take that house off their hands, right? And I know that's a long-term outlook, and you can't think about, what's going to happen in 15 or 20 years from now. We're worried about having a place to live today. I understand that. Well, all I'm saying is it does give hope to this whole thing, like we started with, you're never going to be able to afford a home, guys. This is going to be the number one asset that you'll never own. I don't think so. And that's the main reason. Because of long-term demographic trends in this country, that's not going to be true. So say if you're somebody my age, right? You're 36, and you feel like you're never going to be able to own a home, you still haven't made it to that point yet, well, guess what, guys? Another 15 years from now, when a bunch of these people are kicking the bucket, guess what? Those houses are going to come up for sale, and you'll only be 50. So it's not like you'll be that old. You'll still be able to buy a house if you want to at that point, but maybe you'll decide you won't want to by then. Maybe your priorities will change. And if you're even younger, you have even more hope, you know? You don't need to become a homeowner at 22 years old, guys. It's just not how it needs to be anymore. Like, I know it used to be like that in the past, and that was kind of the norm for a long time, but that's back when housing was more affordable in this country. So even if the housing market doesn't see any significant decline in the near term, which I think is highly unlikely, the long-term demographic trends are still in your favor, for all you young people out there who want to become an owner, but you feel like you're never going to be able to. So just keep that in mind. This is my advice for anybody out there, guys. If you want to become a homeowner, then become one. But don't overshoot it. Do not buy a house that you actually can't afford to pay for, and you're going to be stretching and putting half of your income into the house. It's not going to be worth it. It's not going to pay off unless your income is continually going up and you know you're going to be able to making that payment a little bit easier for you over time. But if that's not the case, don't do it, first of all. Second thing, you need to make sure that you do not listen to these headlines that push you into buying in a less than ideal time, okay? Because you're gonna hear all these things that, oh, prices are going up, and da 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 da. But in reality, when you zoom out, prices are actually still down from where they were, okay? If prices were hitting new record highs right now, it might be a different story. But that's not the case. So don't panic when you hear these things. Make sure your number one priority is you have a roof over your head that you can afford. That should be your number one priority. Know exactly what you can afford when it comes to buying a house. Save for it, plan for it, and make it a goal and make it a reality in the future. But don't feel like it needs to happen tomorrow or you're a failure in life, because that is just not true. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.